Hello, it's May 28th, 2018. I'm Tony Smario coming to you from my father's YouTube channel, BroSal.org. It's Memorial Day. Happy Memorial Day to everybody. And it's my last day here at my father's house, so we're going to have another conversation about what's going on in the world. So I'll welcome Dad to the show. Hi, Dad.
Hey, Tone, thank you, and thank you for having me. I can't wait to have a conversation with you.
Okay, well, what I wanted to do, I think I want to call this era of peace because I want to discuss what you and I have been discussing all week, and that is how we know that peace is involved through at least our scriptural interpretation because we have several mentions. Paul says that when they say peace and safety, sudden destruction comes upon them. Daniel says that through peace, he'll destroy many. As you pointed out, the red horse comes and is given power to take peace from the world. And there's one other place that I recall peace being mentioned. But anyway, so we know that the term peace and safety, the idea of peace being taken from the world, these things are part of our scriptural expectation. And so now to fit that into this time when Jesus said, you'll hear of wars and rumors of wars, but don't be alarmed, the end is not yet. Because somehow the end comes from taking peace from the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so, this is I think the real insight nowadays is while they've got everybody scared of war, what we've been waiting for is some sort of peace, and how that's going to really come about. What kind of peace?
What's it going to look like? What does peace look like? And that's what we were discussing earlier.
That's today. Right. What does the peace that we're looking for look like?
Right.
We know what real peace looks like, and that's what brought us to the point of recognizing that there can't be a real peace in the world because people don't want the people who are ultimately bringing about the peace, who will sell the peace through the media, who will say peace and safety, don't really want peace but war. And the solutions are not peaceful solutions. In other words, whatever's going on between Israel and the Arabs in that region is destined to cause war, not bring about peace and true security. And yet they're going to sell it with those words. And so in comes Donald Trump and the era of a whole different look now it's almost like, for me, the right wing has gone so far right that it's like on another planet. So that even, liberals now are what we used to call right wingers, right? It's suddenly liberal to simply talk about how much weaponry we should use, or you know what I mean? It's not liberal anymore to point out that, wait a minute, we're supposed to be living in a world with no weapons. Even the liberals don't want to, talk that way anymore.
Well, the idea of peace, as we were talking about today, we're using the wrong words here. We're not going to go to war right now definition for peace.
Right. Well, that's what we decided has got to be the outcome, since we know that it doesn't, 3.5 years later they go to war, and we presume from the Pike prediction or whatever that the people behind the scenes are playing everything to war on purpose, so that even their presentation of peace is a con job. In other words, nobody's really after peace. They're after using the word peace and safety to get to the severity of the war, right? Of the breaking of the peace.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's to me the reason everything, I've been saying it for a couple of years, all these fake wars that you can see are so fake, Syria and Iraq and Pakistan, India and North Korea, and all this stuff that really doesn't need to be happening except we stimulate it. The Israel-Palestinian thing, all this kind of crud, is obviously being done to create the need for peace.
Mm-hmm. You have to have an enemy.
Well, not only that, if the breaking of the peace is to cause a time of trouble as never before in the world, then it has to be a desperate peace. Mm-hmm. This is what we were finally getting at, so that it's not a peace in the way the word implies, but this, as you just said, agreement not to go to war right now because the only other alternative is war. Not because we all feel good about anything and we want peace, but that everything is so tense that if we don't make this what we call peace, this truce, then everybody's going to be at war. But then how do you label that as peace? This is what I wanted to talk about. What do we really expect? And then fit it into the concept that what they're really setting up is their false Messiah, mm-hmm. who's going to say great things and work miracles and fool the whole world. Mm-hmm. So how does that fit into this, a peace plan, a peace initiative, era of peace? Is it just an agreement not to go to war right now that gets talked about in the media as the potential for peace? Because Paul said when they say peace and safety, mm-hmm. The red horse takes peace from the world, but that doesn't mean true peace, but simply not being at war, mm-hmm. at the moment.
By starting another one.
Well, but returning it to war. Mm-hmm. That's right. Returning it to the red horse.
Right. And so that's why in my analysis, when I've been looking at it, we hadn't yet defined the term of what peace is in the conversation or in the application that it will be used, because through peace, many get killed because of it, So it isn't a peace. It's like it's a shotgun wedding. It's either you sign this stuff or we kill you. And then everybody gets the idea from the first one. And then that grows because it's no more need for Palestinians to be upset and Arabs to be upset and all the other things, especially if they get what they're looking for out of Iran, because Scripture shows that Iran pulls back, doesn't get involved in this until after that peace is broken. So all the things they're looking to do right now are things that need to be done if they're going to accomplish what Scripture says they do accomplish.
Right, but on a geopolitical scheme, I see all that as very rational, but so how do I fit an introduction of a Messiah that fools the whole world? See, because this is where I think that whatever con is going on right now, mm-hmm. whatever trick they're playing right now that brings something that we call peace and safety, is really the con to bring about the Messiah and the temple, not just a peace.
Yes.
Because that they could just force, mm-hmm. and they could just break, and they could just do it the normal way they do these things. But this one has to be around a Messiah and a temple, because that's the final coup de grace, because that's what the religious world is waiting for, and they've set the religious world up to be waiting for a specific kind of Antichrist, and for a voice to point at that Antichrist and claim it. And so how's that all going to fit into the coming world, especially with regard to how the peace is fit? Because I see it as we have three basic elements: a type of peace in the way like Scott used to define it, cessation of againstness, right? They're going to stop fighting,
right?
Not really love each other in the sense of peace that we acknowledge each other, but we simply agree to stop fighting. That is a certain definition of peace, right? A cessation of againstness. So we're going to stop this againstness and stop fighting. That's one thing we expect to be coming, that the white horse, the revealing of this first seal, brings this righteous warrior with an unloaded bow, symbolizing perhaps a peaceful gesture, a leader without war.
He's going out righteously, but he's going out there to conquer. So,
well, I'm just trying right now. I want to relate it to the three elements of around the peace, because we know there's a cessation of againstness that gets broken. It's perhaps started with this righteous warrior over there, as we've always seen it. We're not sure about that. We have to watch, but we know it's going to result in some sort of declared peace, and it has to be a peace with the Palestinians, which is how easy it is for me to see the move of the embassy to Jerusalem as a setup. Agonize it so you can make peace over it. Okay, kind of thing. A thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Okay, so you got that, and then you have, in addition to peace, you have a 7-year covenant that results in rebuilding the temple that gets broken in the center. That's something that has to be fit into this whole geopolitical scene, because, the way I see it, that's what the real plan calls for, that they're hiding from everyone through all the talk about North Korea, Russian aggression, Iran deal, who's screwing Monica Lewinsky, or, all these stories. Keep anyone from asking those questions about how real is that? What does that mean? Or, because, of course, they're going to bring up building a temple, and they don't want to have a lot of background to have to wade through already. You know what I mean? They've been distracted. Nobody's been talking about that for years now, except the fringy religious people. It's not in the mainstream. Tucker doesn't talk about it, CNN. Nobody talks about the significance of either the occult wanting to build Solomon's temple or the Zionists wanting to build, even though all the conspiracy theorists point at the Zionists as being in control of the world and they want to build a temple. And boy, what about that old prophecy of Daniel, about a 7-year covenant? So that never figures into the narrative. And I find that must be on purpose, because we've seen it for 30 years.
Well, we started watching it because Scott said, my Bible says I'd be watching in the Middle East.
Yeah, but there's plenty of religious people that, all the way back to Isaac Newton, that are looking for Daniel's prophecy. So that's a very big thing in the prophecy world.
Well, then they're skipping it on purpose because it has too much value for anyone to know about.
This is my point.
That's how come nobody listens to it.
All these years, that's right, because nobody was supposed to get too close to Daniel and the idea of that significance, and especially with regard to this 7-year covenant for a third temple. We've been watching for that all these years, and it's very interesting to me that that's not the focal point of the world right now, since you got these Zionists and these occultists, who everybody from Quigley to Alex Jones will show you is running the world. And what do they want to do? They want to build a third temple in Jerusalem. Oh, you mean like Daniel talked about 2,500 years ago? Nobody makes that connection. You see, so for me, it's this peace, whatever it is, this 7-year covenant to rebuild the temple, and a Messiah, right? The Messiah, not a Messiah. The Messiah works miracles, makes a image speak, and the whole world says, aha, we found the answer. So this is what's so exciting to me about our time and our watch, and especially our particular watch, since we're the only channel watching this. Yeah. But that's what makes this time so particularly interesting to me now, and the questions around it that I'm trying to search out is that, how do you fit then the world that I clearly can identify for myself, Jesus saying wars and rumors of wars, don't be alarmed, because it's all BS. This is all propaganda. This is all like the Cold War. This is all part of that wars and rumors of wars, really.
Mm-hmm.
It's all that Cold War BS to get all the guns in place and brainwash everybody into thinking they got enemies they got to kill. And which team are they going to be on when the time comes? So that, see, and here's the bigger point that keeps coming back in my own mind. If you ever take that away, you have to bring that back into a generation's mind. So that's why the peace only lasts 3.5 years, because who your enemy really is and why has to be fresh. Even though you made peace, you never started loving North Korea or Iran or Russia. They just agreed to stop doing their bad stuff, and we agreed, everybody agreed to stop the war chant, which of course is all being controlled in the same place, but the point is for the population of the world, that threat that they're raising today becomes so significant that to appease it, to stop it, to find a solution has to become universally important to the world. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the reason the whole North Korea, the South China Sea, everybody's involved. Mm-hmm. Not a portion of the world. You got the Muslims over there in Burma or wherever, being the Rohingya refugee. You got, you got the conflict is spreading to every corner of the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is in every corner of the world, and the arms have been distributed over the last few years as we've watched it. The right people, like the King of Jordan, has become one of the world's largest arms dealers and has the biggest arms show in Jordan, out there on the desert. So all of this is in place. We've moved tanks on the border of Ukraine up there. These were tanks that we weren't using anymore. They had pulled them out of Germany a long time ago, and now they brought them back in and put them up there.
Well, again, see, that's all to show, to train everybody why, boy, that we must be pretty desperate if we had to pull tanks that we don't, it's all a stage show, but what they're wanting to say is, look at how desperate we are to get more ammunition, which of course the liberal side gets to say, oh my God, look at these warmongers, look at what they're doing, they're going to cause war, so that it keeps that war. That's why Jesus said you're bound to hear about wars and rumors of war. You're bound to, you can't get away from that, but don't worry, because the end's not yet. See why? Because in order to make not only the peace a desperate thing that has, a moment, and I'm still trying to get back to this Messiah. Is it the Messiah that helps bring the peace, and that's why it's so significant? I don't know yet, but the idea right now to me is that the populations have to have the reality of war made real for them, because that's what is going to happen. It's only going to be alleviated for a short time, and only that to stimulate its ultimate confrontational hostility and goal. See, mm-hmm. So knowing that we're in the setup for the war, not the peace. The peace is part of the final acts, of dropping. When they make peace, it's because they're ready to go to war. You see what I mean? So the peace can be, they have to sell it. And this is why I keep thinking it's got to be around this, the Messiah and the peace and the temple all have to somehow be part of a moment in history, like the way 9/11 was a moment in history that the whole world can be focused on.
Mm-hmm. And I see that. And I understand from what's available on the market today to choose from to create something like that is North Korea, because they've been making him the boogeyman constantly for 1.5 years. And
4 years.
Well, longer than that, but I mean,
right
now,
the latest, yeah,
the latest thing has been
back on stage,
yeah, for 1.5 years, shooting missiles, shooting off his mouth, getting called Little Rocket Man, all these kind of things, in order to, and then not only that, but heavy duty sanctions on them. And they caught China cheating on the sanctions, and they went in there and stopped that. So all of this is making North Korea really that important that they have to go make China stop doing things for them and so on and so forth. And now Kim has decided to come to the table, and then words were had, and then he gets called up and said, no, we didn't really mean that. We were looking forward to it, And so Trump graciously said, yes, of course, that's what we want too. So now, to start the people, the masses around the world, to start bringing them hope that the world can come together. It starts out with a monumental monster like North Korea, and they come to this peace, or whatever you want to call it, treaty, or whatever the thing turns out to be, but they promise financial wealth to them as big as South Korea. And they're saying things like, well, they're both Koreans. One of them just lives up north, and they have the same potential and all of these things, So, okay. So now, by doing that and creating this happy feeling because nobody is going to drop an EMT on us and turn off all electricity and put us back in the Stone Age.
Well, no,
the attitude starts churning and evolving into away from war and toward peace, what they would call peace.
Well, the whole thing. I mean, I see where you're going, and I agree that we know that North Korea is a propaganda piece all along, and so the fact that they have suddenly switched sides is like Hamas. Remember when Hamas switched sides? We were pointing that out. But how many years ago? And that didn't change anything except in the way that they are presenting their path on this. Because I say they have a path, and they're not waiting to see what anyone, any leaders do. They've been spending 100 or 200 years to infiltrate, to get leaders in position, or at least to know, for the leaders that are in position, to know who runs the show, and so that they know what everybody, they can script in that broad sense what people are doing. So it's time for North Korea to suddenly flip and become a participant. That really does. I mean, I don't see any other reason when I'm trying to read it from their script. I brought this guy up to be the boogeyman, to make a real, just a spectacle in the world, so everybody could ooh ah North Korea, ooh ah North Korea, especially the Western world, because they're the ones with all the guns. I gotta get to go after him when later he does drop an EMT, or if that's what they said. That in other words, how easy is it to break the peace on a massive scale in this World War III kind of thing we're looking for?
Mm-hmm.
When the time comes, doesn't have to all happen on the same day, but as hostilities break down after the 3.5 year, because remember, it breaks down between the Arabs, and if it's over this temple and it's over somebody coming in and saying, that's it, we're not serving this anymore, and that's what starts the war. What's North Korea got to do with that? Except that if Iran is the one that goes to war now.
Well, the reason that they have to tell them, to knock it off is because the Messiah's come on the scene. And these guys are...
Well, remember, somebody's refuting it.
Well, yeah, but wait, before they have a chance to even refute it, he comes on the scene, and the Jews are doing sacrifice to this God who's already come back. And so the Jews are in conflict here, and lo and behold, they're the ones who start getting killed.
Well, no, I mean, I think we've talked about this once before, that it does make sense that this Messiah is going to point out, which is why I think the temple has to be built, and they have to be killing animals so that the Messiah can come and say, okay, we're not doing that anymore, right? That's why he stops the daily sacrifice and says, we're now going to worship this image, which is the unity of all faith, kind of thing. I mean, everybody kind of see,
because it's going to deceive the whole world.
Well, this is the part why I say getting your mind around the setup is the hardest part because obviously when you're being conned and you're in the con, the things you think are real are being placed there for you to lead you in the direction the con man wants you to. He needs you to be on that corner on that day, watching for the thing he set you up to watch for because you think you know the truth. And so you're watching, and I mean, it's got to be like that because how do you fool the whole world except you're setting the whole world up?
Well, the way you fool them through the propaganda is to divide them and divide them on every issue so that there's always something to fight about.
Yeah, well, that's fine. So how do you bring them all together now on an issue?
A miracle or two.
Exactly. So again, but that's got nothing to do. I mean, it's obvious that their Messiah is going to be convincing. I'm trying to tie it into the three things that I know are coming that aren't here now. A 7-year covenant that gets the Jews doing their temple again, slaughtering animals, and they've been crying for that now for 20 years. They got their temple, but I mean the Temple Institute, the training priests and making, the model for the new temple, all the propaganda that goes along with saying we're going to do it. We are going to build our temple. We're going to get back to what, we have to for our Messiah to come.
Yeah.
And that's why they can be so divided. Well, the Messiah did. We got back to it. The Messiah came to stop slaughtering those animals, do what he says. Right? But the ones that no, but wait a minute, that's not the Messiah that we're waiting for. Our Messiah is supposed to say that we're number one, not we're all the same. Right? Not we're all God, but we're God's special people. That's what our Messiah is. He's supposed to kill everybody for us, not hand us over to everybody. And so it's going to create that, and yet the world's going to see, and this is the part to me that starts to get easier to see over my lifetime, to stand back just in my own lifetime and see how America really was more sold on their Christian identity. Even if you take that away, on a supernatural spiritualism, a supernatural identity, where they become so worldly through the without our knowing it, just watching TV and going through the motions. We've all been programmed and trained to respond like Pavlov's dog to the worldly things, so that when the world tells us what's spiritual, because what the world has taught us is spiritual, seeing ourselves as God. Remember, that's where it's all going. Like when I pointed out to you today, the whole Invictus games, I am, right? I am, very, very telling thing for the world to be, and so much press on that to present this obvious, in my view, occult, deep occult vision of trying to show people where it's really at. Stop believing in this fairy God. Your God. Take responsibility. We gotta, that's where we're going. That's where the future is. And so in their mind, that's what's happening. Why it has to be through a temple in Jerusalem is what's really so odd. That comes down through this Kabbalah, that comes down through their own, I think, need, their own their own decision on how to kill everybody by using their own story, by being God, and therefore proving they are God, and fulfilling the scriptures, which calls for wiping out all those people and leading the people. God's going to lead them back. They're going to be God, and they're going to lead the people back to Jerusalem, to the temple of knowledge, Solomon's temple, not Jehovah's temple of slaughtering animals for a Messiah from heaven, from the sky. See, so in that way, what we're talking about is the temple and the way the occult require a temple in Jerusalem, perhaps if no other reason, because God, I mean, that's what the scripture says. There's going to be a temple. And so they're going to build it, of course, because they're God. And they're going to bring the people to war over their false beliefs. and usher in the Luciferian doctrine, which is the light, the knowledge that man's own intellect is the only God that's available to man. And so, see, if you're going to stretch history out into a bigger thing, like I said, in my own life, I've seen the change of my own society to being far more ready to accept that a godless universe where the spiritual explanation is also is very close to the material explanation, right? Somehow I'm evolving spiritually in the same way we present the earth as evolving materially, and that's gotten mistaken for a god in outer space. And I've always said the reason that the deeper reason that they've controlled religion to continue with that absurd story is so that it can be made absurd by their Messiah, right? I mean, otherwise it doesn't make any sense. So, okay, so trying to draw some of these strings together to get to this era of peace or moment of that they say peace and safety. When does that white horse? I don't think we've seen that warrior come out yet, right? We know we haven't seen whatever we're going to call the peace, and I don't think North Korea could be that peace.
No.
What you're saying, I think, is that it is the propaganda centerpiece, or allows them another spectacular way to flip the story from the way they have been using it the last year or so of, oh my God, and he better not drop a bomb, and oh, what is he going to do, and the world's got to take this seriously, and all that kind of drama on the negative side, into suddenly, if North Korea can flip, like you're saying, if we can make peace there, why don't we, and like,
if you can do it there, you can do it anywhere.
That's it. And not only that, as I've been seeing with someone so right as they've presented Donald Trump and this administration and all that, his stance on Iran and Mexico, all this outrageous, right-wing stance, so that if he signs off on Iran, if he says China's being a good boy, North Korea, who can say that right, who's going to argue that from the right? Who gets farther right wing than him? If he says we got a good deal with Iran, who's going to say it's a bad deal? So I see that his characterization sets up for that most extreme division, where you have the right wingers able to feel so righteous in condemning North Korea, condemning Iran, condemning Russia, and judging whether everybody's being good boys. But when they say they're being good boys, well, okay, then they're being good boys. But if they break that,
but don't forget they're adopting the policy of peace through strength, which means might makes right.
No, but I don't think the peace were. See, that's why that's what the way we started talking about all this. Can it be billed as an era of peace if they aren't able to show true peacefulness anywhere before we get to the temple? Or is it really just going to be a peace at gunpoint that gets us immediately to a temple because it has to be, or everybody's going to blow up in that region? You see what I mean? Like setting up all this dire need that if we don't make peace, we have to go to war. And so a guy like Trump comes along who's so right wing and volatile or whatever, that his position can be seen so dramatic in that way. Trump's ready to push a button if they don't conform. If we don't get this peace done, we're going to war. And they've used the propaganda to build up. You believe that? Oh shit, Trump's taking everybody to war, and everyone will believe that. See, so that if Trump says, well, okay, we're doing this and we're doing that, and they make peace, then all of a sudden, yeah, you'll have that left-right division of the people saying, yeah, well, Trump forced the peace. and they build this temple, and that's why you have this two witnesses, Iran or whatever the two witnesses are going to turn out to be in the world, this group that keeps fighting it. Because, of course, it doesn't come out of an era of peace in the sense of the whole world feeling peaceful, but a desperate making of peace by a powerful king.
Well, it's how comfortable we all felt once the Cold War started and everybody had mutually assured destruction. So they were going to have telephone calls and conversation before anybody pushed any buttons to make sure it wasn't an accident that first happened or whatever. That was what you lived under during the Cold War.
But they never called it peace, see?
No, but they called it Cold War.
But in a bigger sense, see, the world's been saying peace and safety since then. When are we going to find our peace and safety? That's kind of been, if you want to think of it now in this scripture really capturing the whole image of a bigger time period, since World War II and this declaration of the United Nations, and right, they've been trying to get to that peace and safety, right? And so this is what must be coming, is this, I mean, when I try and interpret Paul, when they say peace and safety. So
yeah, sometime in the future, when they, the people in charge, say peace and safety.
Well, no, because he just said the Jews and the Gentiles. Yeah. He just finished describing the Jews and the Gentiles. You, brethren, aren't in darkness, right? Yeah. But the Jews and the Gentiles, when they shall say peace and safety, sudden destruction shall come upon them, and they shall not escape. So it's the Jews and Gentiles saying, again, here we are with the pike thing. With the Arabs in Zion, they're going to be stimulated to destroy each other. What I've been saying, what more contentious issue is there than the temple and the Messiah, right? Especially if the Messiah is not Jesus. Especially the Messiah. That's right. This is the Messiah, and it's not Jesus. So, and the Mahdi's not here. For the, you know what I mean? That
not
whole
only
thing.
That, but the things that he's doing are the things that are called for that he would do at this time, so that you knew he was false if you're a person who had any knowledge.
Well, only the elect. I mean,
that's the people who have the knowledge.
That's a very small group. So there aren't very many people that are going to be aware. I mean, according to Jesus, according to that prophecy, it would fool the very elect if that were possible. So it's a thorough deception. This is the part I keep in my mind trying to see, where are we in getting to that 7-year covenant and that Messiah through or in some mode of peace? Because the peace can't come after the Messiah.
I know, but with the right words and a couple of really hot miracles, the world would change like that. They would all want to know what was going on, because 99% of the world is spiritual in some way.
That's right. No, and not only that, I think we're at a time through this social media frenzy of information, and I think it's been purposely confused so that it's so hard to tell where truth is. That's the perfect environment. That's the thesis for their Messiah antithesis or whatever, or to say that the thesis is all this information and the antithesis is not knowing what's true. The solution is the Messiah, who can separate truth from falsehood, see? And since they're the ones that have created all of this and have technologies they don't tell people about, all these sort of things, think of the truth they can suddenly show through their Messiah to the world.
And convince everyone.
Well, it's got to be, it's just going to be so convincing. And so, again, that part I can see.
See, that doesn't take years. That takes the moment.
That's it. Setting up this moment. Right. That's right. And so, again, it brings me to wondering, will it be the Messiah that results in the 7-year covenant? That doesn't make any sense. How can it be this Messiah then that stops the sacrifice and sets up an image in the temple to worship?
Well, Isn't that what makes him the false Messiah, because he does do these things?
No, he's the false Messiah only because he's not really the Messiah. But he's got to be. But into the world, he's the Messiah.
Yeah.
To the Jews, to everyone
Well,
except the two witnesses.
The reason that he wants him to stop in the temple is because that's not what he came for. He didn't come because of that.
So my point is, he can't really show up then to the midpoint of the 7 year. I'm trying to place when does this, how's the Messiah fit the peace? See, so the peace has to come before the Messiah, is what I'm seeing.
Well, yeah, otherwise it wouldn't break. And the peace that breaks in 3.5 years out of a 7-year gig seems to be a peace that was made under duress, where, you had to, because that was what was good for the world, and we're going to enforce it, and that's that.
Well, the enforcement's no doubt, but I think when it comes to this Arab, see, remember, everybody's got to get on board, like the king in Jordan, Egypt, all the the pseudo-Zionist Arabs, right, on the blue team.
Mm-hmm.
They've all got to endorse this from an Arab standpoint, right? Mm-hmm. Only the last two witnesses. It was the way it's characterized in the scripture. There'll be his last two witnesses. That's it, and they'll try to kill them to stop them, because they'll be disrupting this perfect plan, right? And so all the Arabs, that means at that point, are good with the peace plan. So it can't be it can't be so one-sided that it can't be sold as good for the Arabs and the Palestinians. It's got to be somehow that the Palestinians have won too. That's how they say, when the Jews and Gentiles say peace and safety. See, they have to say that because they've made an agreement that the UN's going to enforce, that they're both satisfied, they're both getting their state, they're both getting their capital, they're both getting their blah, blah, blah. And the Arabs are dancing in the streets, and only the Iranians or whoever, some faction, is saying, no way, it's false, we're being set up, you can't go for this. And yet, it has to go on long enough, as the scripture shows, for 3.5 years, that it does seem to be working, right? And as you've always pointed out, it's got to bring a dividend to the world in the way that either oil comes down, something. And I agree with you. I can't see any other more direct way than that they point that because we did this, and we stopped the fighting, and we made peace, and we put it in the hands of the Jordanian king to organize and blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden the oil's stabilized and the prices are coming down month on month. They're dropping. So think of the Americans are jumping up and down. They're ready to.
Want to come back down to a quarter like it used to be.
Well, I don't know if it'll ever do that. They don't need to do that. But if it just kept dropping a quarter every month, you'd be so excited as everybody, more companies are hiring because of that. More, all of a sudden the economy's stimulated. People feel like we're pulling out of the doldrums, all because, and of course it's in the media, it's got to be made up, all because we made peace.
And anybody in the government who would jeopardize that peace.
Well, anyone anywhere in the world, right. And then the Messiah shows up.
Says, what are you guys doing?
Well, no, to justify the peace.
Yeah.
See, that's the whole point. That's why everybody can claim a Messiah and he can fool the whole world. They made peace. They built their temple. They stuck with the peace for 3.5 years. And the Messiah shows up to vindicate that they've done what was needed to be done, for the Messiah to show up. And so the world's so thrilled because, of course, this Messiah isn't what they're expecting. He's saying we're all God, and this is what Jesus really taught, and he's teaching all these things that straighten out all the crooked bullshit BS.
And he's backing it all up with these miracles that are being performed.
Mouth speaking great things.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean? Eyes like a man, so this thing is a man, but mouth speaking great things and working miracles. So yeah, I think that in the sequence of events, then for me, I have to see it as some sort of peace between Palestine some agree, not necessarily peace, but they say peace and safety. So
Well, see,
whatever the agreement brings, see, the agreement brings the words peace and safety out of them.
yes.
It's not that the whole world has a peace, and yet the red horse takes peace from the world.
Well, because the world is all in the agreement, or most, because the agreement's for 7 years to start with, and they get involved in that. And so I don't know who these 7 people are, or these 7 entities are that are involved, or the not 7 entities. What entities are involved in getting involved in this?
Well, an agreement with
so-called
many, I mean, if I'm going to put it in our modern terminology, sounds like an agreement with the United Nations,
Okay.
because that's who's going to enforce this agreement.
Right. Okay. I like that. That fits the whole narrative. So
And it brings the whole world into it on the blue team to
Right.
defend this peace.
right. And the people that are on the red team, they agree not to fight one another. They agree to put down their weapons or whatever.
Well, it's all
required.
if I'm reading it correctly, in the true leadership setting up a red and blue team through the Anthony Sutton concept that we've funded China and Russia to have armies and be our enemies, then the red team is going to just be put on hold. Only they'll have their right. They're not just going to walk around with flowers in their guns. Obviously, they're going to be on their guard to make sure the agreement is kept. Just like all the wars start, the Mexican-American War.
Trust but verify.
Well, but the Mexican-American War starts because the Americans said, over this tiny little piece of disputed land between where the river split into 2 forks and left us a piece of land in between the forks of the river. And the Americans said, that's our piece. And the Mexicans said, no, the agreement is that, your land starts on the east side of the fork. And so, well, they shot at us. Somebody shot at somebody on that silly little piece of land, and the Mexican-American War starts. And oops, America just happens to take it all after that. So, I mean, this is how you do it.
Whoops.
Well, I mean, this is how you do it. Hey, they broke the agreement, and then through your press, you tell your people what awful savages they are, and they want to rape and kill all your women and children, and if you don't stop them, that's what's coming. And of course, you have to go stop them. So I say what we live in today, and why Jesus said, don't be alarmed, is because this is the brainwashing setup to be, told who's going to rape and kill your women, so that you know who you got to kill when that peace is broken. And so, but the peace, again, to get back to peace, they're going to say peace and safety, but I'm not sure how like getting back now to North Korea.
It's going to be their definition of what they call peace.
Yeah, but that's not even important to our discussion, because it has to be sold to the world as a peace that is meaningful. Otherwise, it's not meaningful when it gets broken. And since it results in a time of trouble as never before, the build-up to it has to be so severe, and that's what I think we're living in. The build-up to when they make this agreement that they're able to then sell as stopping the world from going to war. Here's what we did instead of.
Yeah.
We made this agreement, and as you pointed out, it might be the very reason they brought Trump in as a character that had that different, could be presented so differently, could do things so differently to raise the fire up to this level, that when they made the agreement, it could be something that staved off disaster, because it looked right before that like, people were going to get wiped off the planet, right? Kind of thing. And so again, and it does put us in that position where, with a president like that, and with a right-wing government bent on enforcing through a UN that kind of needed peace in the world, someone like North Korea now becomes, North Korea's playing ball, but also, whoever trusts them, and how hard would it be to sell that, they switched sides and dropped an EMP or tried to, or, how easy would a false flag be to then have everybody now ready to kill North Koreans You see what I mean? Why? Well, because we've been brainwashed, set up that he wants to kill us, and we barely avoided something horrible. So now if you accuse him of anything, well, look at that son of a gun, we have to wipe them out. Suddenly nobody questions that, you're wiping out a race of people over there, or, that kind of thing. So, because I hate to keep reminding people, this does not end well. Read the scripture. God says the end will not be a time of joy, but a time of terrible trouble, terrible darkness. So that's what's coming. That's why I keep trying to wonder, how long are we between, this stage that maybe, as you say, we might call this era of peace, that they built all this war up so that now they can change course. How
At
long
very
will
little cost, and it's just smooth as could be. Play a little game back and forth, and then they sign this treaty or whatever. And
well, yeah, I mean, ultimately, all these wars are fake. I promise you. I mean, the only weapons going off are weapons they want going off. It's not even really costing any money. This is all just BS on a computer screen and a graphic to show us how much of this and how much that, how much money the military needs and to defend in Iraq. And, this is all a bunch of crud. There's something going on over there for sure, but it isn't what they're telling us. We know that. What happened to all these bombing missions in Syria? Wow, we dropped enough bombs. How much money did that cost everybody? And what that result in? Nothing. All we had to do was hire the Iraqi army. They wiped out ISIS all by themselves. So it's all just such a silly game show that they're able to switch channels or storylines. Like I say, North Korea 4 years ago wanted to bomb us, and
well,
now
the thing about it is what it really points out on the stage of history is that there is a plan and it is under control.
Yes,
because it's happening. It's happening right before your very eyes. And for people like us who have been watching it for over 30, well, if I started in 1980, that's 38 years ago. The whole thing has played out in front of us. And the most important thing that I want to talk about, when we first started, our object was to find the truth, not to make something happen, but to watch what does happen.
Right.
And here we have this long period of time of watching faithfully and writing about it and broadcasting about it for all these years.
Well, that's how we know how far off base
everybody else is.
Well, and even we were, for the learning curve and the new knowledge. I mean, I feel like there's really something to, for me, when I try and reconcile the nature of Scripture and God, some otherness. Why are we not God? Why are those guys wrong? Why are the occultists who have all the rational explanation, like Paul said, this story's foolishness to them? So if it's foolishness, why do I believe it? And it's because the Scripture is the one thing that keeps coming back that seems to have the real insight in the world. It seems to know what man's like and how things really work and why, and it keeps being right about everything that way. And so the wars and rumors are wars, but don't be alarmed, because the end's not yet. And this is where I keep coming back to, okay, so how far? We've watched a long time in this protracted vision now. Their plan is a plan that takes decades and even centuries that they're committed to. So the setup is so important, right? They obviously can't just go in there with their guns, or they would have done that 100 years ago. English tried that. They couldn't just control the world with guns. You couldn't send enough troops around all over the world to control it. So
you'd have to kill them all, and that was counterproductive.
Well, even that you couldn't do. You start killing them, and it means people want to kill you. How are you going to kill them? See, that's the whole thing. You'd kill them all. You're going to kill them all, but how? You got to get them to kill each other. So you got to get in everyone's head. So you got to give them all their reasons. So that means you got to infiltrate all their places of learning and worship and authority so that you can create the circumstances. I mean, that's the genius of their plan. That they didn't try to do it in one swoop and blow it.
All right, they have to set up the final deception.
That's right.
And because you can't pull off the final deception until you get to it.
That's right. That's exactly the point. And the final deception is the one I believe that is what they must have determined is the way to bring the world to their knees, to get rid of the religious people, get them to kill each other off, and at the same time come out trusting them with the answers. See, so if that's your plan, what are you going to do but deceive everybody all along? What like the pranks, you know what I mean? When you go tell someone, to go say something in a language they don't know and say the wrong word, and they're embarrassed because they thought they were getting good information. Go tell the groom, congratulations in his language is this word, and you go up and call him an a-hole.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So you're setting up the deception. You've got to make the people think that the word you told them is the word. That's the word that they can trust. So that when they find out it's wrong, who told me that? My teacher, my pastor, my parents. Those sons of guns were wrong about everything. See, that's what you really need to set up if you're going to wind up being able to show everybody what's right.
Yeah.
You see?
Absolutely. And so the setup is to bring that day into fruition.
And they had to know you can read in their writing, they did know that it was going to take a long time of committed infiltration because you got to get all those teachers in place, all those pastors in place, all those presidents in place to lead people astray so that when your Messiah comes along to show them that they've been led astray,
they'll all willingly jump in your pot.
That's right. And the ones that won't,
goodbye.
Now you've set up the reason that they can't go on. They can't be allowed because you've blamed all the wars on them. You've started all the wars in their name, so that when that time comes, you can point back and say, you can't let the Messiah has to just say it. You can't do it. You can't, and then the UN just enforces it. Everybody will enforce it differently, right? In this country, perhaps it simply means you can't buy or sell. But we know that over there, they're going to kill you. They're going to chop off your head if you won't stop saying this isn't the Messiah. Jesus is the Messiah, and he ain't come yet, right? They're not going to let you do that anymore. So I think that's, one of the reasons that we might still be in, the very deep setup, and why I'm not ready to jump on the North Korea spectacle as being too telling yet. I want to see what follows this now.
Yeah, I do too. I'm just saying that's the road I'm looking down.
Well, and to me, it's only that it's right. It's right on the heels of this move to Jerusalem with the embassy.
Yeah, and it's all done in this Trump administration under this tough talk about peace through strength and how important it is for strength. And I mean, really, when you come down to it, without spending the $800 billion or whatever he's got going into the defense budget, we're already 125 times stronger than the strongest one out there and 100 times stronger than the weakest one. So we need it like we need a hole in our head, I think. And to not really go out and spend that money, but to bring the world to a screeching halt over even thinking about killing anymore would be something that would get the people very, very excited, and then to crown it off with a Messiah that brings the real word, the proven word, because he's got miracles, then you bring everybody to their knees. You really do, all over the whole world.
Yeah, well, and when you've already set up all the leaders in the important places to bow to that, to lead their flock that way,
Yeah.
and say, yes, don't you see? Can't you see how this guy's got the answers? This is what we've been waiting for. I mean, isn't it obvious this is from God? If Jesus was from God, how could I mean, Jesus healed people and worked miracles, so does this guy. I mean, what more you Christians want?
Yeah.
You know, a guy named Jesus? I'm sure he's going to come and straighten that out. You guys know Jesus means ISIS? You know, kind of thing, or whatever. I don't, you know, all of that is such
That's also trivial.
BS upon BS upon BS.
It's overlooked completely when a miracle happens, and it happens and you witnessed it.
Well, and when it's on TV now and the whole world witnesses it, and the whole world of supposed confrontational authority, like Fox News and CNN, are both saying the same thing. Well, you can't deny that. You see what I mean? That really, this is what I see as what it means to say that it will fool everyone.
To me, I'm excited because there had to be, and because there has been in this long 38-year watch, there has always been the milestones that you could tell this was important. And Jerusalem and the consulate in Jerusalem was a very major milestone. And it turned a corner. It really did. It turned a corner. And it turned a corner under a person who's talking all this talk. And let's see what his actions are, because they have to convince the people to pay attention to him at this point, because he's building two things. He's building patriotism so that they'll be ready to go defend Jerusalem, and he's building the dissension between the red and the blue like never before on the history of this planet. So that seems to be what's needed right now in order to swing what they have to swing into this position. And for all that work to be done, with the final goal still out there decades, to me is this would all be a little premature. 5 years, okay, but it has to start making that difference in the feelings of the people in the world about the possibility of living better, with better understanding of each other, and less of this wanting to kill, and and it'll bring it around. And even though that might take a long time to accomplish in that fashion, it gets short-circuited by this Messiah and this boom, and miracles and everything. And then everybody, when the buildings came down on 9/11, even the senators went out there and were praying with their hand on their heart. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, right. As soon as the Messiah shows up, that's why the setup has to be ready for the Messiah. They know what they need, and I think that was a good analysis, Dad. So I think we'll end it here. I'll just make a comment on that, because my biggest question right now is the timing of it all. Trying to look into my little history of this watch, and stand here now looking back, and then trying to peer into the future, seeing what's going on today. And I tend to agree with you. If it wasn't for the move of the embassy, I would say it's all just, as I did say a few months ago, business as usual. They're always talking about peace, and we're gonna make peace, and they've been saying that my whole life. And as they keep making war there, they keep talking about every president's gonna make peace, and they're gonna. But nobody's ever moved the embassy, which, knowing that they're not really waiting for anything, they're playing both sides. It means that it's a moment in their plan that's come to be present. Yes, and so to me, it doesn't make sense. This is to set up something 20 years from now.
Well, See,
right?
They didn't do it with Clinton, but they said they were. They didn't do it with Bush, and they said they were. They didn't do it with Obama, and they said
Well,
they were.
because it's always had to be part of the narrative,
Right.
Because they knew that one day it would be when it was time to play that card, and that we know that that card is there in its place, and now another card's coming that they want to play, and according to the scripture and according to the New Age occultists, they want to build a temple, design everybody, according to everybody. There's going to be a temple over there one of these days.
Yep.
And so we know that somebody's working on that. And this move of the embassy to Jerusalem, from our view, can only be seen in connection with getting the brainwashing working toward that goal, that focused on the not only Jerusalem and this whole issue of this eternal capital of Israel, but the struggle that entails with the Arab neighbors now, and how to really solve it. See, they've talked that all along, but of course we know they haven't wanted to solve it because they just keep they just keep talking and throwing bombs, and so they wanted to keep. It's obviously needed to wait for its day. And what I'm trying to get at in a long way here from what you said is, it makes me think that the move to Jerusalem is very significant in that it moves up the day that we're waiting to see. It's a sign that they must be getting closer to their day, because it's bringing the attention and the focus and the intention suddenly into that world in a way that that's been purposely kept on the back burner. And now they've suddenly moved it to the front burner at a time when all this hostility doesn't make sense in the way of, as a peaceful. It wasn't a peaceful gesture, it was actually a very hostile gesture. And yet I've noticed that the hostility didn't Arabs didn't go to war over it. See, and that's, I think, all part of the selling of it to both sides, because remember, the Arabs are selling it to their people. They're going to have to, all those Sunni Arabs are going to have to accept that Jerusalem's building a thing and the Messiah's coming, right? And the Mahdi. See, because remember, the Messiah and the Mahdi. So that makes sense with our vision of Jordan's king being presented as at least the Sunni Mahdi, and that being confirmed by this Messiah.
Mm-hmm.
See, and the only one left out in the cold is Iran, and because they don't buy it in Afghanistan, right? And because they have to go to war over it, that brings in Russia.
Well, Syria too, because Syria,
that's right.
They're Alawites, and that's a version of.
Well, and the point is, in our modern world, it can all be sold as political and economic ties. You know what I mean? They're bound by treaties to defend each other, because they've got all their money tied up in each other's world. So if I get attacked, they're attacking your money. You got to defend. Mm-hmm. And so that's the way they've tied them all together in the modern world. Chinese people say, why are we getting involved? Well, what do you mean? If we,
it's the new Cold War.
Well, it's even bigger than that, because it's the new World War.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's how you get the whole world involved again in war.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, Dad, thanks for being here.
Oh boy, it was my pleasure, and I wish we could do this together every week, but our lives are in separate directions. And anyway, it's been great to be here. I hope you all enjoyed it. Drop us a note at the site there after you listen. Tell us what you think. Be interested to hear what you think about our conversations.
Yeah, we always are. That's one thing that's been, hard for me over the years to accept, that there's only a couple of you, but it's nice to have Michael back. I'm glad you're feeling better and commenting on the shows, and we're glad to have you back participating and supporting what's going on. So I feel like the Spirit has led us all here, and if the ones that need to stay silent, or if who cares? Here we all are, and we're the only ones watching this, and we're working on trying to figure out how to boost our visibility and all that. And yeah, it is expensive, is the bottom line. It costs a lot of money for people to see you in the social media world, and the people that can get you seen cost a lot of money. So anyway, so keep helping us out, and we'll keep doing our best. And it's been great to be here with Dad. I'm sorry I've had to get off the normal schedule right now, but I'm traveling, and I want to get back to reading that book and the Enlightenment series real soon. But anyway, thanks for being here, Dad, and talk to everybody next week.